Hello and welcome to Community News from the Hill and Front Page. I'm your host, Erica Fox, Washington. And we're excited to continue with the Not So Normal, Beyond the Normal lecture series here at Alabama A&M University. And our special guest is Bakari Sellers. He's a political analyst, a lawyer, and just so much more, getting information out there to all of the people, especially on television and making tours like he's done here and he's doing here at Alabama A&M University. Welcome to the Hill.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
We are so glad to have you. Let's just dive
Let's get into it.
right into some things. Now, February 8th, and you're from South Carolina.
Correct.
And 1968, police opened fire on a group of civil rights protesters at South Carolina State University. And they were demonstrating against racial segregation at a local bowling alley. 3 of the protesters, African-American males, were killed and 27 other protesters were injured, and the event has been titled as one of the deadliest events in South Carolina civil rights in that movement at that time. And it predated the 1970 Kent State shootings, which also had some students to be shot at our sister HBCU, Jackson State University. And they were demonstrating against the United States invasion of Cambodia during the Vietnam War. And what I want to ask you about, because you're from South Carolina, and it's called the Orangeburg Massacre, what is it about this event that makes you want to go around, be a leader in sharing this information and this historic information?
Well, I mean, it's a very personal story for me. One of the individuals shot was my father. The only person incarcerated for the events of that night was my father. It happened 19 miles away from my home. I still ride by that bowling alley every day. It still sits right there. I'm hopefully going to buy it soon, which would be so apropos on it. So no, it's a part of my history. I find myself being angrier about that day than even my father was. And that anger, that chip, it drives me. You know, it's this belief that you live in a country that allowed it to happen and cover it up. And it's still the litmus test for race and race relations, and not just South Carolina, but the South. And so, unfortunately, I was on Joy Ann Reid's show on a Sunday back in 2015, and I was 30 years old. My dad was 70, and we were there outside of Mother Emanuel AME Church, where I had just gotten a friend of mine who was killed inside. And so, you know, my father and I were doing an interview, and, you know, for me, it was, the troublesome part was that we were 40 years apart, but yet our experiences were so parallel. And so it helps answer a question of how far we've come. And Orangeburg's really important in our historical struggle. It's one that not many people know about. So
how do you get the word out, especially because you're so, you know, all over the place, sharing your different experiences?
You sound like my wife with that characterization. Boy, you all over the place. I am all over the place, but for me, I'm emblematic of that struggle. I'm a child of the civil rights movement. I wear that with great pride. With that pride comes awesome responsibility. It's a part of my story, and so when I tell my story, the heights of which have been relationships with, you know, Barack Obama, or being on CNN for most people to see on primetime shows and election night shows. 1968, although some 20-odd years before I was born, is still, you know, the most important day of my life.
Most definitely. What did your dad tell you about that fateful day?
Well, see, my story is different in that this day was one of many, because you know, when I would pick up the phone, it's like Aunt Kathleen's on the phone, or Uncle Julian, or Uncle Marion. When I'm in DC, Marion Barry used to take me out for lunch. We used to go, and he had a favorite hot dog vendor on the street. We weren't going to a fine dining establishment. He would take me out to get hot dogs and walk up and down the street, or John Lewis, or any number of people that were part of my proverbial village. Even Dr. and Mrs. Hugini, who helped me out tremendously. They were, you know, we all played basketball together, and they were played basketball with Aquila, and, you know, they were the basketball parents. So it wasn't just this story. It's all of these individuals who are a part of my village. So I try to lift them up daily.
So also in the 60s, of course, was the Children's Crusade.
Of course.
Over 3,000 children marching in Birmingham against segregation. College students like my dad, Dr. Derek Scott Washington, was protesting the sit-ins of the lunch counters with John Lewis and Bernard Lafayette, and being arrested. What do you say the children of 2018 that are marching? They want to be safe. They are against gun control. What do you say to these young people?
No, I think it's awesome. I tell everyone that, you know, it was young people in the civil rights movement. It was Harvey Milk and young people in the gay rights movement. Black Lives Matter is a collection of young friends of mine. Generation Z is now leading this new movement. I mean, they're awesome.
That's
generation.
where we are now.
We're at Z now.
Wow.
I'm a millennial, and then you have Z to follow. And Z is pretty cool. I mean, just a month ago, we were worried about them eating Tide Pods, and now they're like leading a generation of change. And so it's fascinating to watch. And our job is to kind of get out the way.
Do you think they should be seen and not heard, or heard and not seen, or they should be seen and they should be heard?
I think they should do what their heart desires. I mean, I think the irony is that old people oftentimes, especially with black folk, if you count 10 black folk in a city like Huntsville, then all 10 of those folk will tell you what they did in the civil rights movement, when in all honesty, like less than one of them was actually there. And so we have to realize that the struggle sometimes is lonely. And I want those kids to know that they have partners. I want them to know that they have people who will help them in the struggle. The weirdest conversation I had was an older pastor once telling me that my friends who were protesting don't need to protest in the street. They don't need to block highways. And I was like, literally, have you seen the poster for Selma? Like, they literally blocked a bridge. Like, how far have we come that you've forgotten where we were? And so, no, I'm there. I'll be there Saturday when they're having their rally in DC. I don't want to speak. I don't want to do anything. I just want to be there to kind of touch them and feel their inspiration.
It's good to be a civilian sometimes.
It's hard, but it's good.
Now, I heard that you quoted Stokely Carmichael one time.
I did on TV. It drove people crazy.
And I loved it. If a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. If a white man has the power to lynch me, that's my problem. So we know some powers that are trying to do away with equality for everyone. Are minorities giving them or him the power to lynch?
So I mean, that's a difficult question. I gave that quote in the context of racism because I think that people get caught up when someone calls them nigger, right? And so when I looked at Charlottesville, I think that the most amazing thing about Charlottesville is that those individuals didn't have to wear hoods, that they were okay being themselves, their faces shown, that pride and that bigotry and xenophobia and hatred. And so a lot of these people have power within their systems. They're loan officers, they're teachers' assistants, they're dental assistants. They are part of the everyday fabric of our America. And we have to be focused on shattering those things. I think you used the word equality, and I'm not, equality is an amazing goal. I mean, I think sometimes though we need to be having a conversation about equity, which is vastly different. And one of the things that I want to do is make sure that no matter where any kid grows up, they're not punished because of the zip code that they're born into. And so I think being an example is a good start for me down that path.
I like that about the zip code part in the south side of the railroad tracks or the north side of the railroad tracks.
We always had those railroad track problems in our community.
Most definitely. And I've been watching you, and you were with Anderson Cooper on CNN recently, and you said, quote, racism is a question of power, not of attitude. Can you expound on that a little bit? I
mean, we have some stupid racists out there, but they don't really stop my day. I was just looking at a guy, I posted it on my Twitter this morning, and there was a guy who just broke down crying because he was being charged with a hate crime because he followed a Muslim family for 20 blocks and was flipping them off and all of this other stuff, and then he got arrested, and now he's crying. And I don't waste much, it's funny to me, but I don't waste much time on that. I focus more on our systems, which are inherently unequal. We have environmental inequalities, educational injustices, a criminal justice system which is in tatters, lack of access to capital like our colleagues. There was just a study that came out yesterday in the New York Times, and for me it was such a gratifying study because I have a lot of friends who consider themselves to be rich Negroes, and they still suffer the same fate as many other poor Negroes by comparison and relative to their white counterparts. And so I don't really worry about the superficial racism that exists and permeates our communities that Donald Trump has given life and steroids to. I'm more concerned about our systems of injustice.
So what about leadership when it comes to, people are still saying there aren't any black leaders out there. So when you have the leaders that are still running your SCLC, NAN, National Action Network, your NAACP, and I could keep going, you have these that are still there, have been there for years. Do you find, are they teaching and training the younger ones?
I think that black folk have a problem in that we succumb to a messiah complex. which means that we are waiting on the next great leader to come and take us somewhere and lead us somewhere. You know, the next great King or the next great Martin or Malcolm or the next great Obama. And what we fail to realize sometimes is that it was like a lot of those grassroots activists, which are the reason we had the change that we had, like your father, my father, and many others. And so it doesn't necessitate us waiting on a Messiah or a leader to come and guide us. I think that we'll be fine with a new generation of grassroots activists.
That's what I want. These young people to be the ones to be the voice.
Oh, they'll be fine. I mean, you have so many leaders on this campus. I mean, and you know, they may not have identified it yet. They may not have found their niche yet, but they will. I mean, we always find ourselves. Sometimes it's later than others.
So, what is your main platform for Bakari? What is your main platform to get the word out to young? I'm focusing on young people because you are here at Alabama A&M University. For them to know that it's okay to lead, it's okay to speak your voice and be involved, educated.
I mean, I don't know. I just think I can be an example, and I think that. You know, being an example is cool, and showing young people just by the life that I live that you can have fun, you can have a platform, you can have some semblance of success, you can, you know, raise a family, and you can still not be afraid to share your viewpoint.
So you're a graduate of Morehouse.
That's right.
So what was that experience like for you?
Best 4 years of my life.
Really?
I had to get out of Atlanta. If I did not get out of Atlanta, then I would probably still be there today. So I'm grateful for it. I love it. Atlanta is one of the best cities on earth, and so I enjoyed it.
So do you think young people should focus on wanting to go to a HBCU versus a
No, HBCUs matter. I think my parents gave me a choice. They said you can go to any college in the country you want to as long as it's an HBCU. And so I'm proud. I'm very happy of the decision I made. I wouldn't trade in, and not only that, but I can compete with anybody in the world. So. I mean, I'm sure that Alabama A&M is teaching their students the same, and so that's exciting.
Most definitely. So we know we can follow you and find you on CNN. Where else can people find you?
I have an amazing podcast called Viewpoint with Bakari Sellers. This week's episode just came out this morning. Has Simone Sanders on it. My mind's going bad, but I've had Hillary Clinton, I've had Charlamagne the God, I've had Mark Cuban, I've had Charles Barkley, Eric Holder, William Barber, Van Jones, Angela Rye. So we've had a big collection of guests. You know, I'm on CNN nightly. I'm on again tomorrow morning at 10. I'm traveling. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the normal stuff.
Love it.
I don't know how to snap yet, though. I don't want Snapchat.
I don't snap. Facebook and Twitter, that's enough.
Yeah, I do Twitter.
That's about all I can do. Well, thank you so much for coming to the Hill here at Alabama A&M University. We love the partnership Morehouse and Alabama A&M. And we thank you for coming by and being a leader.
Thank you so much. No, thank you for allowing me on your platform.
There's Bakari Sellers here at Alabama A&M University for the Beyond the Normal lecture series, and a part of Community Spotlight, Community News from the Hill, and Front Page. Thank you so very much for watching and listening, and have a great day.